Shared between India and Bangladesh, the Sundarbans is the largest contiguous mangrove forest on Earth. It is a 10,000 square kilometer tract of saltwater swamps and shifting mudflats, constantly reshaped by severe tides and cyclonic storm surges. Standard terrestrial plants and animals cannot survive in these conditions. To exist in this volatile mix of saltwater and oxygen-deprived mud requires profound evolutionary adaptation. Mangrove species like the Sundari and Bayen trees have developed specialized aerial root systems called pneumatophores. These roots emerge vertically from the mud, equipped with pores that facilitate direct gas exchange with the atmosphere during low tides. These tangled roots also perform a vital physical function. They trap incoming sediment to build and stabilize the coastline, while simultaneously filtering heavy metals and toxins from the brackish water. The Bengal tigers here have adapted to this amphibious world by becoming smaller and more agile than their mainland relatives. They have evolved into powerful swimmers, regularly crossing miles-wide tidal estuaries just to patrol their territories and hunt. Perhaps their most specialized trait is internal. In an environment where fresh water is scarce, the Sundarbans tiger has developed the capacity to drink brackish water, a behavior that would lead to renal failure in other subspecies. Humans navigate this landscape too. Traditional honey collectors, known as molis, enter these predator-rich creeks on small wooden boats, using smoke bundles made of mangrove leaves to deter giant honeybees while they harvest wild wax and honey. From breathing roots to salt-drinking tigers and daring honey harvesters, these specialized traits have maintained a brutal biological equilibrium for thousands of years. Survival in the Delta is governed by a unique socio-religious truce, the worship of Bon Bibi, the guardian goddess of the forest. Hindu, Muslim, and Adivasi communities all venerate her before entering the tidal creeks. This tradition imposes a strict moral boundary on resource extraction. The legend of Bon Bibi equates greed with a breach of an ecological contract, deterring the type of overexploitation that often decimates terrestrial forests. Yet, despite all of these remarkable biological and cultural defenses, the entire ecosystem is now showing signs of systemic failure. If an ecosystem specifically evolved for extreme conditions is reaching its limit, what does that mean for the millions of people who rely on it for protection? The Delta's health relies on a delicate equilibrium between freshwater discharge from the Himalayan river systems and the tidal oscillations of the Bay of Bengal. Over the last century, a geological tilting of the Bengal basin diverted the main flow of the Ganges away from the Indian Sundarbans. This natural progression has been accelerated by the construction of upstream dams and barrages, which have significantly reduced the freshwater discharge entering the delta. Lack of freshwater flushing allows the ocean to push saline water deeper, transforming the soil into hypersaline mudflats. This shift triggers top-dying disease. Excessive salinity impairs the Sundari trees, leading to canopy collapse and widespread mortality. The loss of the trees is only the first step in a cascade. As the water becomes saltier, the indigenous freshwater and estuarine fish habitats are being destroyed. For the 4.5 million people living on the forest fringes, these fish are a primary source of nutrients. Their decline is directly linked to rising rates of chronic malnutrition among local families, as the food security of the entire region begins to erode. By altering the water chemistry at the top of the chain, a single hydrological chain has begun to dismantle both the forest structure and severely affects the public health of the inhabitants simultaneously. As the viable forest area degrades, the dense human population and the tiger population are being pushed into more frequent, often fatal, intersections. There have been successful localized interventions. The installation of more than 100 kilometers of nylon net fencing along the forest-village interface has reduced tiger straying incidents into human settlements to nearly zero. Similarly, dedicated breeding initiatives have helped the northern river terrapin recover from fewer than 50 adults to a growing population of hundreds within protected assurance colonies. But while fences keep tigers out of villages, they cannot stop humans from entering the forest. Driven by the loss of their farms and fisheries, thousands of people enter the core tiger territory every day to forage for crabs and honey. These encounters result in roughly 3,000 women living as Baghabidhaba, or tiger widows. After losing their husbands to attacks, these women often face intense social discrimination. Because many of these attacks occur when men enter the forest without legal permits, their widows are left without state compensation. This legal void, combined with religious stigmas that often blame the wife for the husband's death, traps these survivors in a cycle of destitution. While physical barriers like nylon nets can manage the movement of animals, standard conservation frameworks have yet to address the gendered socioeconomic crisis following these fatal encounters. While local interventions like sensing provide a temporary reprieve, they are facing a threat of a different scale. Sea levels in the Sundarbans are currently rising at nearly double the global average. This results in the physical erasure of the land itself. Lohachara Island has already been lost to the sea, and the landmass of Ghoramara Island has contracted by 50% since the late 1960s, swallowing entire villages in the process. This slow-onset disaster is creating a growing cohort of climate migrants. Forced to abandon their ancestral lands due to permanent flooding, thousands are migrating to urban centers without resettlement planning or legal status as refugees. The shift from localized threats like poaching to macro-environmental crises has led the IUCN to downgrade the region's conservation outlook to significant concern. This mangrove canopy is a critical bioshield, absorbing the energy of cyclonic storm surges that would otherwise strike millions of inhabitants in the hinterland, including the city of Kolkata. Effectively managing this retreat requires more than local wildlife protection. It demands a transboundary governance strategy between India and Bangladesh to restore freshwater flows and provide for displaced populations. If this ecosystem pushes past its historical recovery parameters, the resulting collapse would threaten species found nowhere else on Earth and leave millions of people without their primary